Oscar the Dachshund by Franz Caspar. Chapter 1. Oscar's Birthday. Oscar led a happy life, as happy a life as any dachshund could lead. He lived with Willie, his young master, in a small house in the middle of a little town called 7 Towers. Every morning, lunchtime, and evening, Willie filled up a big plate for him, and whenever Willie was not at school, he played with Oscar in the street, or took him down to the river, or into the nearby woods. Every evening, Oscar's warm basket stood ready for him in the kitchen, and there he would sleep all night long, without waking up once. He would not open his eyes again until morning, when Willie's mother began bustling about in the kitchen. Then he would shake himself and stretch and snuff the air. This morning was just as usual. Willie's mother looked at the clock on the wall and wiped her hands on her apron. Oscar had been waiting for this. He jumped out of his basket and ran on ahead of her up the stairs. She knocked on Willie's bedroom. "Willie, time to get up," she called, and opened the door. Oscar slipped straight through and jumped up on to Willie's bed, but Willie only buried his head deeper under the bedclothes. "He's still snoring away as if there were no such thing as school," said Oscar, seizing Willie's bedclothes by the one corner. He pulled them off the bed. Willie sat up with a jerk and rubbed his eyes. "What, is it morning again already?" he asked. "Yes, of course it's morning," said Oscar. "Can't you see? The sun has been shining in through your window for ages. It's time for school." Time for school? Willie was astonished. "No, there's not as much hurry as all that. I've got something very important to talk over with you first." Oscar looked at his master in surprise. "Yes, something very important indeed," repeated Willie. "It's your birthday tomorrow. You will be exactly 1 year old, my father says. I want to give you something for it. You know, a birthday present. I've asked my father I may take as much money as I need out of my money box. He's going to give me the money box key today." Oscar lay down on the floor and yawned. "As far as I'm concerned, don't bother," he said. "I do well enough without any birthday presents. I really don't want anything. It would be much better to save the money for your roller skates." Oscar lived with his young master in the middle of the little town of 7 Towers. "No, you must ask for something nice," Willie insisted. "Hurry up and tell me what you'd like. I shall have to buy it today, or it'll be too late." Then Willie's mother called, "Willie, it's struck 7:30. What are you taking so long about?" "Help, 7:30 already," cried Willie, jumping out of bed. "I must hurry." He wiped his face flannel quickly over his face, pulled on his shirt and trousers, and ran downstairs to the kitchen. He gobbled up some bread and honey and drank his milk. "Mummy, could you give Oscar his breakfast?" he asked. "It's late, you know. I had to talk over something important with him." Then he picked up his school satchel and disappeared through the door. Oscar jumped up onto the windowsill and watched Willie running out to the road. "Don't forget, will you?" Willie called up to the window. "Think over what you'd like to have. I've got to know by lunchtime." Then he ran off as fast as he could go. On the clock tower, the hands were already pointing to 8 o'clock, and in 7 Towers, where Willie lived, school began at 8 o'clock every morning. Willie came home again before lunchtime, whistling happily to himself, as he always did when he had no school in the afternoon. "Well, Oscar," he asked the Dachshund, who was lying curled up in a ball in his basket, "do you know yet what you want for your birthday?" "Oh, this birthday," said Oscar with a frown. "Well, if you must buy me something, then get me a sausage, one of those nice long sausages from Mr. Beetle's the butcher. That won't cost too much." Oscar ate his lunch in the kitchen as usual. When he came back into the dining room, Willie was sitting at the table. He had finished his lunch too. In front of him stood his round yellow money box. "Waste not, want not," was written on it in black letters. Willie was putting his money together in little piles. "Shall I tell you something?" he said. "I'm going to have the roller skates anyway from my father, if I get good reports for the whole of the year. This money is to buy something for you, something really nice, even if it takes every bit." He pushed the money onto his handkerchief and knotted the corners carefully together. "Does a sausage cost all that much?" asked Oscar in amazement. "Shall we go and buy it now?" "No, you must stay here today," answered Willie. "I've thought of something else, but it's a secret, what I'm going to buy." "Oh, all right," growled Oscar, and crept back into his basket. He would much rather have gone down to the river with Willie and had a swim. But what can a dog do if he's got to have a birthday present? He curled himself up on his cushion and began his afternoon sleep. He dreamed all about an enormous, great, juicy birthday sausage. He bit mouthfuls off it all day long without stopping, but the sausage didn't get any shorter. It only grew longer and longer. It was almost before evening when Willie came home. He was carrying a little brown paper parcel in his hand. Oscar jumped up at him and tried to tug the parcel away. "Stop it! Stop!" cried Willie. "Leave it alone. It's got the secret inside." Then he went up to his room by himself and shut the door behind him. Whatever can it be? Oscar wondered as he sniffed about in the air. "It's not a sausage. I would be able to smell that for certain. It smells more like new shoes. Surely Willie isn't going to give me a pair of shoes for my birthday." The whole evening he kept pestering Willie. "Oh, do tell me what it is." When the bedroom door was left open for a minute, he slipped in and sniffed into all the corners and at all the drawers. "Don't be so inquisitive," said Willie. "You'll be able to see it soon enough tomorrow. It's something really smashing." "It smells like new shoes," thought Oscar, as he lay in his basket after supper. "But it doesn't look a bit like shoes, and it's something really smashing." Willie says, "No, I simply can't guess what it can be." For the first time in his life, Oscar did not sleep very well. He kept on waking up and seeing the moon shining in through the window. It was nearly morning before he fell soundly asleep, and when he opened his eyes again it was broad daylight. Willie was kneeling beside the basket. He had washed and dressed himself already. "Hello, Oscar, you old sleepy head. Happy birthday," he cried, shaking the Dachshund. Many happy returns of the day. Oscar jumped out of his basket and looked round the kitchen in astonishment. Thank you," he said, and stretched his nose up in the air. "I can smell those new shoes again." "Here you are," cried Willie, holding up the brown parcel. With one leap the Dachshund snatched it out of his hand, and slish-slash he ripped off the paper. What was it lying there in front of him? A collar, a beautiful red collar, with splendid golden studs gleaming on it. Oscar began to wag his tail as hard as it would go, a sign that he was especially pleased. He picked up the collar carefully in his mouth and ran round the kitchen with it a few times. Finally he put it down on the cushion in his basket and cried, "A collar! What a beautiful, wonderful collar! Everyone come and look. I've always wanted one like this. Now I'll be able to go out for a walk with a collar on, just like all the other big dogs." Willie sat down at the table and started to eat. "Eat up your breakfast quickly," he told Oscar. "Then you can come to school with me." "Really," he said, "I think I'm the smartest dog in the whole town." Oscar would not leave him in peace. "Please, Willie, put the collar on," he said. "I must see how I look in it." Willie could not say no, and a moment later Oscar went running into the big bedroom. The wardrobe there had a mirror that came down almost to the floor. Oscar looked at himself in the mirror for a long time, first from one side, then from the other. "Really," he said, "I think I'm the smartest dog in the whole town." "I think so too. You look like a prince's Dachshund," said Willie's mother. "Now be off with you both quickly. It's 5 to 8. Willie picked up his satchel, and they set out together. When they got to school, Willie tickled Oscar behind the ears to say goodbye, and said, "Be good and go home, and don't stand about. We'll go out for a walk together this afternoon." There were a few children standing by the schoolhouse door. "Oscar, here's Oscar," they cried, and came running up. "Look, he's got a collar on." "Today's my birthday," Oscar told them proudly. "This is my present from Willie. Now I'm a grown-up dog." Then a bell rang loudly. The children hurried away into the schoolhouse. Oscar was left all alone in the big playground. Chapter 2. A Wild Chase. Oscar stood in the school playground for a little while and listened to see if he could hear his master Willie through one of the big windows. Then he went once round the schoolhouse and back to the road. "Hello, Oscar," someone called suddenly. It was the postman. Oscar ran over to him. "What's that you've got?" asked the postman. "How long have you had a collar?" "It's my birthday today," said Oscar. "My young master bought this for me." "That's a really fine collar you've been given," remarked the postman. "But take care that you don't lose it." "I am taking care," said Oscar, and trotted off down the main street until he came to the grocer's shop. I could just show the grocer my collar too, he thought, and went into the shop. "Good morning, Oscar," the grocer greeted him, "and what can I do for you? What a splendid collar you've got on. I've never seen that before." "My young master bought it for me," said Oscar. "Today's my birthday." "Your birthday?" cried the grocer. "Then you must have something from me too." He took the lid off a tin and gave Oscar a big chocolate biscuit. He knew very well what Oscar liked best. "Thank you very much," said Oscar, and went on his way. Then a lovely smell of meat and sausages came to his nose. Across the street was the butcher's, where he always liked to stop. "I must go and show them my collar there too," thought Oscar. He looked carefully both ways to make sure there was not a car coming, then ran over the street and went into the butcher's shop. "Good morning, Mr. Butcher, sir," he said, and sat up and begged in front of the counter. "And what can I do for you?" asked the butcher. "Where did you get such a lovely collar all of a sudden? I haven't ever seen that before." "I only got it today from my young master," said Oscar. "Today's my birthday." "It's your birthday today?" cried the butcher. "Then you must have a present from me too." He cut the end off a long sausage and threw it high up over the counter. Oscar caught it cleverly, and the next moment he had swallowed it all up. "Thank you very much, Mr. Butcher, sir," he said, and went out again into the street. "Now I must go and show myself to Mr. Bunnyman, the baker, too," thought Oscar. He went on a little way to the baker's shop. "Good morning, Mr. Bunnyman," he said. "Good morning, Oscar," answered the baker. "What can I sell you today? But tell me first, where did you get that lovely collar? I've never seen it before." "It's my birthday," said Oscar. "My young master bought me the collar out of his savings." "It's a lovely collar," repeated the baker. "My wife ought to see that too." He called his wife. "What a beautiful collar!" exclaimed Miss Bunnyman. "Made out of real red leather, with golden studs. That must be the finest collar in the whole town. Now you must have something from us too for your birthday. What would you like best?" Oscar blinked up at the big cream cakes that smelt so glorious, and wagged his tail. "No, I mustn't be greedy," he told himself. "At least my master, Willie, always tells me so. Perhaps a small cream bun, if I may," he said to the baker. "A cream bun?" cried the baker. "Yes, since you've got a birthday today, and you're a good little Dachshund, you shall have a cream bun." "Thank you very much," said Oscar, and snap, the cream bun was gone. "Now take good care that your lovely collar isn't stolen," said Miss Bunnyman. "Your master wouldn't like that, would he?" "I'm taking care," said Oscar, and ran happily out into the street again. Suddenly he stopped. Just in front of him appeared the black cat from next door. Oscar got ready to bark loudly and run away. Every time she saw him in the street, the cat used to arc her back, spit terrifyingly, and show all her claws. Today, however, she blinked at him in a friendly way and came purring up to him. "What have you got on?" she asked. "A collar." "And what a collar!" "What's so special about that?" said Oscar in reply. Any proper dachshund gets a collar like this for his birthday. Before the cat could say any more, Oscar turned his back on her. I wonder if Clementine is up yet, he thought. Clementine was a lady dachshund and lived in a big house. For a long time now, Oscar had thought Clementine very pretty indeed. Sometimes he had wished he could go for a walk with her, but she always behaved as if she did not even see him. Oscar had felt very annoyed about this. Sure enough, Clementine was sitting at the top of the steps, basking in the morning sunshine and looking down at the main street in a bored way. No, I shan't run after her any more, decided Oscar, and he started to walk straight past. Then Clementine ran down the steps and came up to him. "Good morning, Oscar. I hardly recognized you," she cried. "My, how handsome you look. Where did you get that lovely collar?" "Good morning, Miss Clementine," said Oscar as he looked her over from head to tail in a friendly way. "The collar? Oh, that's simple really. I got it today for my birthday." "What a beautiful collar it is," repeated Clementine. "Will you give it to me?" "No, I'm afraid I can't," answered Oscar. "It's a present from my young master, you see." "At least we could go for a little walk together," said the lady dachshund. "I buried a bone in the garden yesterday. Would that appeal to you?" "It would be very nice, but perhaps later on," said Oscar. "I've eaten all sorts of things already. A chocolate biscuit from the grocer, some sausage from the butcher, a cream bun from Mr. Bunnyman, the baker, and Willie's mother is waiting for me at home. I haven't drunk my milk yet." Oscar and Clementine sniffed and snuffed a goodbye to each other, and then he ran on down the road. He had not got very far when he heard a loud growl behind him. He turned round and saw a boxer dog glaring fiercely at him. "What are you doing here with that collar, you show-off?" barked the dog. Oscar opened his mouth to say that he had been given the collar today for his birthday. He did not get a chance to speak, for a white Pomeranian called out from the other side, "What's the matter?" "Yes, that dachshund's a real swank, all right. Look at that. What a collar." Oscar began to run, but barking broke out on every side of him. "You swank, show-off, be off with you, or we'll give you what for." This was terrifying. The boxer came bounding after him, with a whole pack of large and furious dogs at his heels. "Catch him! Tear his collar off!" they shouted. Oscar ran for all he was worth. Home quickly, he thought. "I'll be safe there. They won't dare come into the house." Then an enormous bulldog came trotting round a corner. "Stop him! Catch him! The cheeky rascal!" All the dogs called out to him. The bulldog bared his great teeth and rushed at Oscar, barking wildly. "I'm lost," panted Oscar. "There, in front as well as behind. What shall I do?" He looked round desperately and caught sight of an open door. Quick as lightning he slipped inside. It was the dairy. Oscar only just managed to hide behind a big milk can before the other dogs came rushing in after him, yelping loudly. "He went in here," one of them cried. "He must be here." The dairyman, who was standing behind the counter, grabbed a broom and shouted, "Get out of here, you mongrels! What on earth do you think you are doing?" He aimed at the dogs with the broom handle. Then the Pom shouted, "There he is! There, behind that can!" The dogs charged furiously at the milk can. The can began to wobble and fell over with a loud crash. The milk ran out all over the floor. By then Oscar was out of the shop door. Just round that corner, he thought. Then they won't be able to find me again. He turned into the next alleyway and ran on as fast as he could. At last he dared to stop and get his breath back. What a wild chase! Now there was nothing for it but to go home by a roundabout route. If the dogs spotted him again, he would not have a hope. Oscar hid behind a big dustbin and waited a minute longer. Then he trotted slowly along at the side of the street. Now and again he stopped and sniffed at a lamppost or at the corner of a house. What will happen if the other dogs don't like me any more, thought Oscar, feeling very worried. Only Clementine likes my collar, but the two of us can't stand up to the whole of this mob alone. Just as he was turning into the street that led to his house, the loud barking broke out again. "There he is! There he is! Get him!" There they were again. The dogs were standing right outside his house. Oscar turned tail and ran as fast as his short legs would carry him. "I must find somewhere to hide," he thought. "If I go straight ahead, they'll catch me up as sure as bones are bones." There was a lorry standing at the corner of the street. Oscar slipped between the wheels and out the other side. For a moment his pursuers lost sight of him, but then the barking started afresh. Oscar sped on. The uproar came closer and closer. "Catch him! Stop him! Shall I run in through an open front door?" Oscar asked himself desperately. "But then if they find me, I'll be caught in the house. Maybe the man who owns the house will give me a beating too." By now Oscar was running down the road that led to the station. He was not really allowed to go there. Willie had strictly forbidden him to. There were always so many cars driving to and from the station, and it would be all too easy for a small dog to get under a railway train. But what else could Oscar do? The big dogs were getting nearer and nearer. "Catch him! Bite him!" echoed in his ears. At any moment they would get hold of him and bowl him over on the ground. "Willie, Willie, help, help!" cried Oscar as he leapt up the 5 steps into the station building. He tore through a long passageway and out onto the platform. The other dogs were not far behind now. He could hear the puffing and blowing. "I can't go on, I can't go on," panted Oscar, and he wanted only to lie down with his legs in the air. Then he saw a herd of cows out by the railway line. They were just getting into a train. "They've got to help me," thought Oscar. With his last ounce of strength he shot towards the cows. Without stopping to think, he slipped in between their legs and up the ramp into the cattle truck. Through the doorway came the sound of barking and wild mooing. Then he ran through there. He must be over there, among the cows. A dog shouted outside. "Be off, all you dogs," mooed a cow, "or we'll toss all of you on our horns." "He may be in the truck," cried another of the dogs. "They'll find me in a moment," thought Oscar, and cowered down in the darkest corner. "No, he's gone underneath the truck," cried another dog. "After him quickly, or he'll get right away from us." The barking gradually died away, and the cows followed one another into the truck. Oscar sighed with relief. Not one of the dogs had noticed that he really had slipped into the cattle truck with the cows. What a bit of luck! Chapter 3. A Narrow Escape. Oscar lay still for a while in the dark corner of the cattle truck. He was panting, with his tongue hanging right out of his mouth, and his heart was beating as if it would burst. "You were lucky," said a cow, bending her great head down towards him. "I pushed one dog off the ramp myself. Otherwise he would have found you for sure. What mischief have you been up to make them run after you like that?" "Please, Miss Cow," said Oscar, "I haven't been up to anything. Honestly, I haven't. It's just because of my collar. The other dogs don't like it because they haven't got such fine ones themselves. Don't you think it's lovely too, Miss Cow?" "Don't call me Miss Cow. Just call me Lisa. That's my name," the cow told him. "And what are you called?" "My name is Oscar, and my master is called Willie," he answered. "He gave me the collar this morning. You see, today's my birthday." He told Lisa how he had gone to school with his young master, how his walk home had gone so well at first, and then how the other dogs had come up and chased after him. "Well, now, that is quite a problem," said Lisa, and shook her head thoughtfully. "Anyone who parades through the streets showing off his collar must be able to protect himself. You'll have to growl and bark and bite, like you dogs usually do." "But I'm not allowed to bite, my master told me," objected Oscar. Lisa shook her head. "You mustn't begin a fight, and you mustn't bite human beings, so long as they haven't done anything to you," she said. "But you only need to show these dogs that you can growl too, and that you have good sharp teeth. Then they'll leave you in peace." Suddenly the truck began to rumble and jolt. "What's that?" cried Oscar. Jumping up in 2 bounds, he was at the door. "Lisa, look!" he shouted. "The station is moving." "The station isn't moving," Lisa said calmly. "It's we who are moving in our train. It only looks as if it's the station moving." Oscar stared out in alarm. He had not noticed from his corner that the men at the station had pushed the barred gate across the doorway, and had taken away the ramp. "I want to get out. I want to go and find Willie. I want to get out," he cried, and tore at the bars with his teeth. The cows only watched him in silence. The station had already swept past them, and now one telegraph pole after another went flitting by faster and faster. "I want to get out," shouted Oscar, still louder, and tried to force his head between the bars of the gate. At last he succeeded in getting his head outside, but however hard Oscar pushed, he could not get any farther. He was too fat. Then he realized that he couldn't pull his head back either. He was caught between the bars. He tugged and pulled with all his might and main until his neck ached. He could not go forwards, and he could not go backwards. Oscar was trapped. "Help, help!" he called in despair. "Stop pulling," said Lisa. "You'll only pull your head off. Or your ears. The guard will help you as soon as he sees you." There at last, Oscar had pulled himself free. But what next? He took a quick look round the truck. High up under the roof there was a little window. It was open. With one leap, Oscar landed on Lisa's back, and the next moment he was up in the little window. It was just big enough for him to get through. "Goodbye, Lisa," he called back into the truck, and got ready to jump down. "Stop, stop," cried Lisa in fright. "Don't jump. You'll break your neck. You'll land under the wheels." Oscar didn't hear her. He waited until one more telegraph pole had flitted past, then closed his eyes and jumped far out through the air. Now for the bump, he thought, and held his breath. Oh, why didn't I go on to the next station? I would have been able to get home all right from there. Then he hit the ground. He didn't lie where he fell, but went rolling and somersaulting over and over until he was so giddy he couldn't see or hear. At last, splash, he came to a stop. He jumped straight up onto his feet again and shook himself. He had rolled all the way down the high railway embankment and had fallen into the water in the ditch at the bottom. A path ran along close to the ditch, and Oscar scrambled up to it. He stretched out all his legs, one after the other, and waggled his tail. Nothing was broken. By some good fortune, he was still whole. Oscar looked all around him. Over on the other side of the meadows, he saw the last few houses of the town, and knew the station must be somewhere about there too. Thank goodness, he had not come very far after all. Slowly Oscar set off. He found some mole hills in one of the fields, and scratched about a bit in the earth. Suddenly he paused. Willie might be out of school by now, he thought, and started running towards the town. At first he meant to slip secretly home through the back streets. Then he remembered what Lisa the big cow had told him. "I'll show those dogs my teeth all right," Oscar said aloud. "I'm going straight along the main street. It's only cowards who let themselves be frightened." He turned bravely into the main street, ready for whatever might happen. There, on a corner, were the unkind dogs who had run after him earlier. "Now to show them who I am," thought Oscar to himself, and walked past the dogs with his head held high and a solemn look on his face. His heart was beating as if it would burst. At any minute they would see him and come rushing towards him. The dogs stayed just where they were, and behaved as if they had never seen Oscar before in their lives. "What's come over those big dogs all of a sudden?" the Dachshund wondered. "They can't have recognized me." He went on a little way. Then he saw the black cat. The moment she caught sight of him, she arched her back, spat at him, and lifted one of her paws, with all its claws showing, as if she were going to scratch him on the nose at any minute. The cat was so friendly this morning, thought Oscar. What's come over her so suddenly? Shaking his head, he trotted on. Before long he saw Clementine, the little lady Dachshund. She was sitting up at the top of the steps leading to her house. "I must tell her about the adventures I've been having," thought Oscar. There can't ever have been a Dachshund before who jumped out of a moving cattle truck. He skipped at the steps. "Am I disturbing you, ma'am?" Oscar asked politely, and started to lie down in the sun beside Clementine. She looked at him furiously. "What do you think you are doing?" she cried, leaping to her feet. "Go away at once. You have no right to be here, and anyway, you stink of cows." Without looking around again, Clementine stalked into the house. "Whatever is happening," said Oscar. "The big dogs don't chase me any more. The cat puts out her claws at me. Clementine doesn't recognize me. Either I'm dreaming or else the whole town has gone mad." He shook his head hard. All at once he sat stock still. What was this? Slowly he lifted one paw and felt up and down his neck with it. Then he shook himself again. There was no doubt about it. The collar had gone. He had lost his new collar. "However can that have happened?" Oscar cried in dismay. "And where can it have happened?" He hurried back the way he had come. In vain he looked in all the alleyways and streets. In vain he ran up and down the station. There was no sign of the collar. "Perhaps the collar fell off when I jumped out of the train," thought Oscar. He went back to the ditch he had rolled into and clambered up to the top of the embankment. Then he ran along the track until he got back to the station again. There was no sign of the collar anywhere. "Whatever will my master Willie say?" mourned Oscar. "He spent all his savings to get me something nice, and now that expensive collar is lost. And on the very first day, too." Oscar's eyes filled with tears. "I mustn't tell Willie at once," he said, "even if he's angry and gives me a good thrashing. Perhaps he will know how to find the collar again." With his head hanging, Oscar went home. He looked neither to right nor to left until he got to the front door. Then he jumped up towards the bell. A short time ago he had learned how to jump up against the door and pull the bell handle. No one opened the door now. Oscar sat down sadly on the steps and waited a while. Nobody came. "I'll go and have another search," said Oscar, getting up. "Maybe I have time for some good luck before Willie gets home." Then he ran out once more into the street.